Subway has teamed up with Live Nation to bring you great food and great music for a great value. Right now, buy a Subway $5 footlong and get a Live Nation concert ticket for $5 to participating Live Nation shows like Nickelback, The Fray, and Crew Fest 2. Ticket price does not include fees. See store for details. Subway. Eat fresh. Eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Before we get to the podcast, I did want to mention that we started the SG Awards, which you can reach on the Sports Guy World page on ESPN.com, www.sportsguy.net, trying to figure out all the different best of the decades, movies, athletes, TV dramas, comedies, bands. We're going to do this as the next few months go along and also have some guests that actually have something to do with the categories and bring them on to maybe bounce some ideas off them. So I think this will be fun. You get to vote, give some feedback, et cetera, et cetera. Check it out, the SG page, the SG Awards. I don't know how I came up with such a brilliant name. And now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, from ESPN, Marc Stein and Ric Bucher. I think Bucher's like in some sort of minivan like Clark Griswold right now doing the podcast. But you guys are you both there?
I'm here. I'm actually not in the vehicle yet. I am at the San Francisco airport. So any ambient noise that you have is fellow travelers.
I like it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Lakers first. And the fact, I wrote about it yesterday and today about they swapped Ariza for Artest, and now it really seems like Odom might go to Miami. Wait, do either of you have information about this?
You want to go first, Dynamo?
I think that there is a fair chance. He's obviously sitting there waiting, trying to drag this thing out to see if the Lakers are going to come up on that offer, but the offer that he passed on the first time, it's now gone down. It's less than $27 million over 3 years. So he's clearly waiting. You got the Heat on the other side putting all this pressure on him. You got Wade in L.A. You got Riley in L.A. I think it's going to come to a head in a couple of days here, and it doesn't sound like the Lakers are willing to move an inch. If the Lakers don't change their position, I do think there's a real chance he's going there.
Buke, what are you hearing?
Odom doesn't want to leave the Lakers. But they are almost forcing his hand. And what I really don't understand is the idea at this point. I don't buy that the Lakers have come back to the table and are really interested in having him back at this point. I have to believe now that Dr. Buss was genuinely upset that he didn't take the initial offer. And the reason being that they pulled it off was, if you're not happy with this, then we really don't want you. As we know, L.O. hasn't always been the most motivated day-to-day guy to begin with. So the idea that you didn't want him back because he wasn't happy with your first offer, now you're going to offer a second one for less, and now somehow he's going to be happier with that. It doesn't make any sense. But the bottom line is, he really doesn't want to go to Miami. The reason he wants the fourth year is because, as we know with his diet, and understandably so, he's figuring, by the time I get after the next 3 years, there's no way I'm going to be a $9 million player. So let me get as much as I can right now.
Well, here's my question then. Why didn't the Lakers just offer him 3 years, $30 million, or 3 years, $33 or whatever? Because I can't even remember another instance in NBA history where a team won the title and then dumped two of their top four guys. I don't think it's ever happened before.
This is the part that really doesn't make any sense to me. And it's funny because Orlando basically did the same thing. They went to the finals and they changed over their team. And I talked to Otis Smith about that, and he said, there's a concern about complacency. Well, I'm not sure I buy that for a team that actually didn't win the title. I would think that you would be, like the Lakers, hungrier than ever. I believe that some of it is the guy, Vince Carter looks better to them because they've seen all of Hito's work up close. And they decided, you know what, we've gone far enough with that. we like the other guy. We're going to go in another direction. But for the Lakers, if they had swapped out Artest for Lamar Odom and kept Ariza, I would have totally, completely understood that, because as crazy as Artest is, by and large, he can do a lot of the same defensive things that Odom does, and he's not going to pass up a big shot with the game on the line. Ariza, meanwhile, gives you all the athleticism, all the versatility, and that's a guy who you know is going to continue to be hungry and get better. So I really don't understand. And somebody said to me they included the Lakers among the teams that were available for purchase at the right price. And I didn't buy it, particularly after seeing, I don't know, it was a Huey or Louis bust. Which one was it?
I think it was Mo.
Doing the thing at the finals and saying, you know, our family wants to win more championships. If they're looking to win more championships, I don't understand how you make the moves that you've made with, I mean, this is almost Grizzly-esque or Bobcatish in looking at the bottom line.
As I said, I'd have to go through it, but I don't ever remember another instance in NBA history where a team has dumped two of their best four guys after winning the title. Steiny Mo, do you have any sort of insight into what the hell they're thinking with this?
No. Well, basically, I just think it's Bus is starting to look at that payroll, and it's just starting to freak him out about how expensive this team's going to be next year, because I think keeping Odom takes them into the 80s or whatever.
Yep.
But it's absolute lunacy what they're doing, because they're basically undoing the Pau Gasol trade, the trade that everybody in the league is still muttering about to this day. You know, Simmons' boy Nash just did his, officially signed his deal yesterday, and on his conference call he had some crack about how, he stayed in Phoenix even though he knows no one's just going to give them a Pau Gasol. I mean, that's the deal that changed the landscape of this whole league. And if they give Lamar up, it's like they're invalidating the greatness of that trade. And to me, Orlando's a different situation, because if you look at history, the teams that lose in the finals, the Lakers were the first in 20 years to win it the next year.
Yeah.
Teams that lose in the finals don't get back there.
Well,
I would say that Orlando shuffling the deck to me makes a lot more sense than the Lakers showing up to camp with no Odom and no Ariza.
Wait, but hold on. Wait a second, though. For what they could have spent just to bring back Haydu, they paid that same money to Brandon Bass and a backup center. And yet last year, nobody could match up with this team except the Lakers, and they solved that problem by bringing in Vince Carter. Don't you feel like they would have been the favorites had they just brought back Haydu? I
agree without question. And that here's the thing. I believe that we're in an era now, for whatever reason. It's the Team USA commitment. It's the lesser depth on teams because of the penny pinching, that you are not going to see teams, the same two teams, get back to the finals again for a long time. We've seen it already, and the chance of repeating, I believe, is out the window. But all that said, I don't know that you just take that as a foregone conclusion. We won our championship. Now we're going to be cost effective. And I agree with Steiny Mo. Certainly Dr. Buss is looking that it's really expensive. And every team is looking at it and looking at where season tickets are and where sponsorships are and saying, wow, I'm paying a ton, and I just don't know that I want to do that. The only thing that is different for me is if there was one bastion that didn't take that approach, it was the Lakers, especially with a formula that if they brought Ariza and Artest back, or Artest and Odom back, you'd still make them the prohibitive favorites to win another title. And if they don't have two of those guys, then you know what? I probably put Boston ahead of them and put them in a pack with 4 or 5 other teams.
Not signing Odom is going to be so much more costly than keeping him. Let's not forget, they want to try to convince Kobe Bryant to do a contract extension this summer. I mean,
Right.
do we think Kobe's going to sign an extension now if Lamar is not back? I mean, no way.
Well, where is Kobe during all this? I mean, this is the most competitive guy on the planet, and he won a title. He doesn't care anymore?
I'll be honest. I don't feel that if there are guys that Kobe would go to bat for, Lamar isn't one of those guys.
Really?
Kobe wants to be competitive. No, because Kobe it makes it difficult. Look, we're looking at the big picture, and we're looking at what Lamar brought to that team. When you have a Pau Gasol, when you have a Trevor Ariza, I still say this: if Trevor Ariza does not become the player that we saw him become last year, Lamar Odom is still ringless. He had a couple of nice performances, but he was not one of the pivotal players that won that championship. If you look at when he got his numbers and when he got his performances, they weren't in the critical junctures. It was when everybody else had it going anyway.
Lamar swung that thing.
Well, but Lamar got hurt, though. He did.
Well,
he hurt his back about halfway through the playoffs.
He got hurt. He
had a lump in his
Denver
back.
series.
Yeah, here's the thing. He had the lump in his back. Everyone made a big deal about it. But did you at any time watching him play go, oh, his back affected him there?
I felt like it did. I did for a couple games. I did feel like he wasn't the same.
Because of his overall performance, or because you saw him make a move or do something and you saw it impact him?
I just didn't think he was healthy. He didn't seem like the same kind of Lamar Odom that I had been watching all season. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know who that Lamar Odom is. I mean, sometimes I see him and I think he's a world beater, and sometimes I see him and I think, where's his game? Look,
there's no question he's a luxury when you have all these other guys on the team. But if you don't have him, if you don't pay for that luxury, you are now fully dependent on Bynum and Artest. Is Kobe going to hitch his wagon to those two guys?
Right.
I'll tell you what, the biggest mistake in my mind, the more I hear about Artest in Houston, the more I feel like the Lakers made a terrible switch in replacing Ariza with Artest. The talk out of Houston is that Artest really doesn't have the athleticism anymore to guard threes. He broke plays all the time.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, Ariza, you didn't have to get him shots to get his defensive effort. You can't tell me that that's the case with Artest.
Well, and also, the more I watched Artest last year, I watched it happen with Antoine Walker. These guys, they get a little bigger, they lose their hops, and all of a sudden they're playing below the rim all the time. They're 40% shooters from the field. And I don't really know what his elite skill is anymore. I mean, I know he can shut down not shut down, but he can definitely handle a physical small forward like Carmelo or LeBron, somebody like that, but not a quick guy. He can't guard quick guys anymore. And he's not a good shooter, so I don't really know what's left with him.
Well, he can play the four, though, so if you're going to lose Odom, you better have someone who can play the four. Because,
right.
I mean, that part of it's good, but, I mean, believe me, it pains me to admit this scoop you had in your column the other day.
The underwear scoop?
That story about the underwear in Game 7 and missing 2 buses and showing up for the third bus in his underwear was... I would have loved to have been in the Laker offices when they read that.
Well, I think the Rockets did a really nice job of kind of burying all the stuff that maybe would have made this signing seem a little less appealing to the Laker fans.
Let's not forget, Odom is probably Artest's closest friend in the league, or one of the top 3.
Right.
I think Odom's got value to the Lakers just because of that. I mean, just to keep Artest plugged in, you're going to want Odom around.
You guys still didn't answer my question of how it made sense for Orlando, who they basically made this trade: Brandon Bass and Marcin Gortat for Hedo Turkoglu, and now they're a conventional team. They have none of the matchup problems for other teams that they used to have. Why would you do that? Financially, it didn't help them.
I see your point that why didn't they just sign Turkoglu with the money they gave those two guys? But they still have Rashard Lewis, who's a matchup nightmare by himself. So I wouldn't totally agree with you. And I do skeptically have to sit here and wonder, yes, they match Gortat now, and they've taken on all this money, but I think there still is a sense that they're going to trade this guy down the road. Are they really going to keep this payroll that they've assembled? Because it is a ridiculously high number compared to where they've been in the past.
Yeah, but who's taking on that contract? Who is going to pay $33 million for Gortat?
He's a center with skill. Someone will take him.
Unhappy playing 10 minutes a game?
Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, but then
I believe ultimately that they did sign him to keep him as an asset. That they felt that there was a market out there, and I've had people tell me that there's already a deal in place. Now, the Magic say that that's not so, but I have to believe that they signed him, that they brought him back, that they matched the offer because they knew that there was a market for him. And I was given an indication that the reason was, hey, you know what, let's try to turn this into something. So, but the interesting thing is going to be is, that may be the feeling right now. Talk to GMs. And around the league, everybody thinks that, things have quieted down now for the most part. But when they get to September, you're going to have teams that are suddenly looking at the fact. I mean, I chalked it up, and there are 23 teams that are over the cap right now, and 14 that are in the luxury tax.
Right.
Those teams come September are suddenly, whether the GMs like it or not, the owners are going to be saying, hey, we gotta loosen contracts here, and I don't care how you do it.
Well, they need to wait until October because I'm going to be in England watching soccer in September.
Oh, come on, Stein.
I'll pass that around.
Well, didn't we saw it yesterday with that Okafor Chandler trade, which was, I felt like it was financial on both sides.
This is, you know what, I don't even want to get into that because what I'm wondering is why we're spending all this time talking about these things when you guys on email were flame-throwing each other over the Dallas Mavericks. Why are this? You talk about burying the lead. Well,
yeah,
we have another hour to get into that. It's not like we're running up against the time. Why did we not kick into that
right off the bat?
Well, we were saving that. That's the entree. We're doing all the appetizers.
I mean, Okafor and Chandler. You're talking about two teams that don't really matter right now. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I feel like New Orleans. New Orleans got better. Yeah, Chris Paul matters.
If Chris Paul is unhappy, that matters.
Yeah.
Well, certainly that matters, but I don't know that getting Okafor settles his unhappiness.
Right. That's why this is so interesting. That they've now, instead of trading him for an expiring contract, they've now taken on 3 extra years and almost $41 extra million for a deal that might not make Chris Paul any happier.
Well, it doesn't make him any happier, and I don't see how it makes them necessarily any better.
Well, I think Okafor is a better player than Chandler. At least last year he was.
And for Chris Paul, I'm not convinced of that.
But Chandler was terrible last year. I mean, he was really he's probably a D-.
He's hurt. But I wouldn't argue that Okafor will be an improvement over what Chandler was last year. But I don't look at Okafor and say he's a perfect fit for the way Chris Paul and the way that team plays ideally.
He's a better personality. Better personality fit though. Good guy.
Personality?
Yeah, he's a good guy. I met Okafor. Nice guy.
Tyson Chandler is one of the nicest guys that you will ever meet in the league.
I'm with you on that, but there's something was going on there with him and Byron Scott last year. There was something weird was happening.
It ain't just Tyson Chandler and Byron Scott.
I know. But that's what I'm saying.
Maybe this trade gets Jordan one step closer to buying the team. Then the Bobcats become a little more interesting.
I want to know where Jordan's getting the money to buy the team.
Well, not out of his bank account, surely.
Not out of his bank account. Yeah, so New Orleans, even after this trade, is still like $6 or $7 million over the tax. I think they're at like $76 million, and the luxury tax is 69.9. Back to Buke's point, I'm sorry, Steiny Moe's point, it just seems like these teams are all going to start panicking soon about how do we get under this tax threshold. So I feel like we're not even close to being done because that Chandler Okafor trade was just a bizarre trade to me. I feel like there's going to be 10 more of them.
Yeah.
No, they've got Antonio Daniels with an expiring, so I'm sure they'll try to move him somehow. I don't know if they'll be able to, but that's probably their next step to get under the tax.
But who is taking on his contract? Who would want that?
The Dallas Mavericks would take that on because they seem to be taking on money every which way they can.
Yeah, all right. Let's get into it. So,
thank you,
Steiny Moe. Defend the 2004 All-Stars, the Dallas Mavericks.
I mean, I can't believe at the price they got Marion that you don't like that move. I'm shocked.
I mean,
I'm stunned. He's making 6-4 next year. He made 18 last year. How can you not like that move?
Because I watched him play on 2 crappy teams last year?
Well, I forgot because Jason Kidd is worthless to you, so he won't be any better playing next to Jason Kidd. I forgot.
Oh, God. I mean, it always comes back to everybody Jason Kidd. He's the magic elixir.
Somebody get Devin Harris back on a flight here. We need him.
Jason Kidd, who hasn't had a relevant playoff moment in 5 years, is the magic. He's going to save everybody's career. Buke, you're the third-party innocent bystander. What do you think of what Dallas is playing here?
They're making the most of what's available, and Mark Cuban has decided that he's willing to spend money to amass as much talent as he can, and hope that something happens like the Lakers don't bring back Lamar Odom, and San Antonio has Tony Parker get hurt over the summer and not be available, and the door opens suddenly, and you're there. And I will say this: I mean, this is the intangible. I've always been on the Jason Kidd bandwagon. I've watched him get old. I know he's not what he once was, but you put athletes around him, and that's what I see them doing, trying to put as many athletes around him as they can, and hope that he can be the brains of an operation, and whether it works or not, I have my doubts. It's not my money, so if Mark decides to spend his money that way, I'm not going to be one to complain, because this is the one thing I do appreciate about it. He's taking a shot. I mean, he's saying, I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff together and try to make it work and take a shot, and I appreciate an owner who does that as opposed to the ones that sit back and kind of, surprisingly what we see the Lakers doing and saying, you know what, we're okay being what we are, and we'll see where that gets us. Maybe it doesn't make us a title contender, but it keeps us in the conversation, so that's good enough for us. So that's where if you want to look at it from an analytic standpoint, you can take it apart. But you know what? There are so many people not even attempting to get into the race that I have a hard time saying that finding fault with what Cuban has done.
Well, it always comes back to me to identity. So now they've done all the.
By the way, you owe me some money for this because
that was pretty good. It was a solid defense
for you that you should be putting out there yourself.
I'm ready to dive across the finish lines. I'm going to let Simmons do whatever dribble he wants.
All right. Well, here's my pivotal question.
Over here, ready to pounce.
My pivotal question. So it all comes down to what your identity is.
Yeah.
This team, the way it's presently constituted, to me, it seems like they have to go small, play Nowitzki at center, play Marion at power forward with Josh Howard, Jason Terry, Jason Kidd. Those are your best 5 guys. That's what you got to do. Basically do the Suns' D'Antoni offense practically. Is Dallas willing to do that?
Yes.
The big question is Rick Carlisle willing
to finish games? Yes. I thought you're the one who's been clamoring as loud as I have that they need to finish games with Dirk at the 5, and that's their best team.
Yeah, but then why did they go after Gortat?
Because
Because you can't play Dirk. You can't play Dirk at the 5 for 48 minutes.
The other reason is Dampier is in his last year, and they wanted to make sure they had a big man on the roster after Dampier was gone, and they looked at it as with Kidd, you put a center who can move and finish, and it's like the Mikey Moore effect. He's going to be better playing with Kidd than he would be anywhere else. That's why they wanted Gortat so bad.
I mean, I'm not totally against the game plan if they said, we're going to go small, we're going to run, we're turning the team over to Jason Kidd, and that's how it's going to be. But we all know that Rick Carlisle isn't going to do that. He's never going to give a player that kind of leeway. So I don't see how that works.
I'm completely confused why I am always forced to defend the Dallas Mavericks.
Because that's your position.
I really don't know how we've arrived at that position, but I'm just going to hit you with a couple quick things here.
Okay.
The first thing is, like you mentioned, that they defensively they will not have a Dwight-like presence, obviously. But offensively, if you play those 5 guys together to finish games the way they see it, it's kind of a poor man's Orlando effect. Offensively, who are you going to leave if those 5 guys are on the floor? They're all shooters that maybe not, they're not Kyle Korver, but you can't leave any one of those guys.
I have an idea. Well, I have an idea of somebody to leave. How about Sean Marion?
I think he still more often than not will be respected.
But by who? By his family?
Well,
I think that's the benefit of having a Jason Kidd.
I guess we'll see.
He's going to find ways to get Marion the ball in places that he can score.
If he's dive cutting, they'll
Jason's
figure it out.
Find him.
Sean Marion last year, 20% 3-point shooter.
Who were his point guards?
Last year,
I'm
not buying last year. He was in limbo the whole year, and I think that affected his game.
Has not topped 33% 3-point shooting since 2004.
But they don't just, like I said, what if they find ways to use him as a dive cutter, and he doesn't just have to sit out on the 3-point line?
Not only that, but when he's on a Dallas team that has at least 3 guys who are better 3-point shooters than he is, he's going to have no choice. I mean, he didn't jack up threes in Phoenix the way he did this past season. Not at the same pace.
Now let me throw 2 more quick things.
Wait, hold on. I'm not done refuting point number 1. This is an issue I have with the way that the Ron Artest thing was covered and the way the Rasheed Wallace thing was covered and also this Marion thing. Sean Marion isn't as good as he was 4 or 5 years ago. He's not the same guy. The stats say it. If you watched him with your own eyes, you would know. Like, this is a guy who's in another phase of his career. I mean, I'm not even sure he's a starter on a title team.
But come on.
I'm not sure. What have I seen that makes me think
that's a fair
he might be
argument.
a 6th or 7th man at this point?
So the Mavs are being stared down by Father Time, but the Celtics are spry and ready to conquer the East, and they're the clear favorite.
I didn't say that. I'm very disappointed with the Celtics offseason. In fact, I would make the case that every single contender got worse except for San Antonio. I really think that. I mean, I think Rasheed.
You could make that case.
Rasheed.
Make that argument.
Rasheed obviously is better than Mikey Moore and Scalabrini, but when you throw in the fact that Danny basically threw Rajon Rondo under the bus for the entire month of June, I don't know what to expect from that guy now. What do we think of Rondo? Do we know what Rondo's capable of this season? I have no idea.
Well, that's why they're going to get Jason Williams, and then they won't have to worry about it.
Well, do you want me to throw out these last 2 reasons why the Mavs did this
please.
deal, and then you guys can move on to your next...
Go.
The other thing was that, first of all, like, the Mavs decided they weren't going to do deals like the Spurs did for Jefferson. They didn't want to trade for a $15 million guy like Jefferson, like Vince, or even like Okafor. So if you're not going to be in that market, that's why they did the Marion deal, because they could get him at basically half the price. But the most important thing to remember here is they still have 2 major trade chips to either use in a trade or roll into free agency next summer, because they got Josh Howard and Eric Dampier basically on expiring contracts. So I don't think they're done. I mean,
who's taking
moves for now, but it's not like this is their team that they're stuck with.
Wait, who's taking Dampier's contract?
Dampier's contract as an expiring deal, you don't think anybody wants that?
For what?
In a sign and trade?
You don't have any number 1 picks. What are you giving up in the sign and trade?
He's huge financial relief.
He is? But who are you, like, if let's say I'm like Houston, do I want to give you T-Mac for Eric Dampier's contract?
I do not think they will have
a wash, isn't it?
I do not think they will have a shortage of opportunities, because unlike most expiring contracts that are no good after February, his is good beyond February, because he's not going to make those incentives to qualify for next year, but that keeps his contract in play longer.
So who are you saying, like say, for instance, Milwaukee wanted to get rid of Michael Redd's contract. Michael Redd comes back, his knee's healthy. Milwaukee says, we'll give you Michael Redd for Eric Dampier's expiring contract.
And whatever.
Right.
Yeah, what I'm saying is they are not necessarily done. They still have options going forward. So that's why I think, to look at this like Sean Marion was their all-in move, I think that's a mistake to look at it that way.
Why don't we just look at it this way? Are the Dallas Mavericks better now than they were at the end of last season?
Nope.
I don't know. Are they?
There's no question they are. Now, come on, Bill. You may not like what they did. You may think that they overspent, but you can't say that they're not a better team with Sean Marion, Drew Gooden,
Drew Gooden's a stiff. Come on, Drew Gooden.
You know
Stop it. He's a goofball.
Drew Gooden is another guy. Look, I mean, I really like the way they got a bunch of guys who, as far as figuring out the game, I would not really trust my team with. But with Jason Kidd putting him in the right places, I like the gamble. I like the gamble.
You guys, I'm almost ready to hang up. I can't take it anymore. So now Jason Kidd is going to salvage Drew Gooden's career. This is his 7th team in 7 years.
We're not talking about salvaging careers. We're just talking about a team being better than they were at the end of last season.
A 1-year gamble on Gooden, and you're like thinking that it's the Mavs. They should just fold.
Yeah, but Stein, you just told me that they didn't want to take any big contracts because they wanted the flexibility, marrying shorter money. That enables them to do some other stuff. The other stuff that they did was sign this guy, Drew Gooden, who couldn't even play for the Spurs in the playoffs last year. Like, I don't understand how that's a good thing.
Here's the bigger question I have, sort of going back to the Orlando, and it's not Hato, it's Hedo.
I like calling him Hato.
You were rather critical of him, saying that he was done and that they were smart in not bringing him back. Now suddenly you're saying they would have been the prohibitive favorite as the title contender if they had brought him back and kept Vince.
My argument was that.
So which is it? Which is it, Simmons?
If I'm going to spend $50 million over the next 5 years.
Yes.
If I'm definitely doing that, I'd rather have Hedo Turkoglu than Brian Bass and Marcin Gortat. Because now I could try to win the title this year with the team I have.
But you not only said that, you said they were a matchup nightmare with Hedo, which, by the way, I agree with you on all that, and I believe that they took a step in replacing Hedo with Vince. Right there, I felt that they took a step back. But I'm just wondering, because I had to hear all about how Hedo was over the hill, and we'd already seen the best of him and all that.
It's true.
And now it's suddenly they should have kept him, and if you're going to pay $50 million, that's the guy you would have spent it on. It's just a little contrary to what I was hearing via email. So I want to know, where did you see the light?
I saw the light when they spent $18 million on Brandon Bass, and then they matched the Gortat contract. I was fine with letting Hedo go, but I don't understand why they use their assets in another way. That's the part I don't get. I also feel like, what they had with Hedo and Richard, with Dwight Howard in the middle, it was a unique circumstance that Dwight Howard is really the only center that could have played with those two guys and made that work. I'm not sure you put Hedo in Toronto, and I'm not sure you don't have that advantage anymore. You're not going to have the guy who can grab 17 rebounds in a game. They don't have a rebounder like that. So now he's going to hurt you if you play him at power forward or wherever. You're not with me on that?
I like what Toronto. I think of any team this summer, Toronto made the most improvement.
For this year or for the next 5?
You know what? The way this league works now, there is no building for the next 5. It's what you're doing for next season, maybe the season beyond. But long-term planning, I mean, who does that outside of Oklahoma City? Who does that anymore?
I think Houston does it.
See, that's the other thing.
I think Portland does it.
First, you're lauding Presti for not taking on any contracts, and now you want him to sign David Lee.
Well, I just think David Lee at some point it becomes a ridiculous bargain. It's like somebody offering you a plasma for half price. At some point, you got to step in. This guy's one of the best 5 rebounders in basketball. He should.
Well, now wait a minute. Whoa.
Yeah.
He's a great rebounder on a team that plays up tempo and has nobody else fighting him for boards. He is the energy guy. This whole he led the league in double-doubles and all that. That is such a inflated statistic. I love David Lee. Would love to have him on my team. The idea that he's anything above a mid-level exception player is crazy.
All right, hold on. Quick.
Don't judge him by stats.
Hold on. I'm going to read you the top 12 rebounders last season. You tell me which guys are better rebounders than David Lee. Dwight Howard, yes.
Yep.
Troy Murphy?
No.
Tim Duncan, yes.
Yeah.
Okafor?
Yes.
All right, I'm giving that a wash. Chris Bosh?
Should be.
Healthy, yes.
Yao Ming out. Pau Gasol, no. Kevin Love, potentially.
Wait a minute. Pau Gasol is not a better rebounder?
Statistically, not by any calculation.
Pau Gasol is going to have a body on him. I don't know that anybody's really. Here's the thing. I mean, how much focus was there on stopping David Lee from rebounding?
David Lee is every year is one of the top 3 rebounders per minute guy, no matter how many minutes he plays.
I hate to put in this position of having to knock a guy for making the most out of what he is, but when teams game plan, even with the New York Knicks, they're not game planning for David Lee.
All I'm saying is he's a good rebounder.
He is a good rebounder. But when you put him on a quality team, and when you're now going to pay him, look, Malik Rose at one time was a pretty good rebounder. Brian Cardinal was an underrated rebounder. Now, I would say David Lee is better than both of those guys as an energy guy.
I would hope so.
But not by much.
Okay,
so enough to say, you know what, he's an $8 million player.
But Sean Marion is? You guys are confusing. So you think Sean Marion is an $8 million player, but David Lee isn't?
Without question, because Sean Marion can do so many more things for you offensively.
But David Lee is only 26.
I'm with you on this one. David Lee's he's in that ballpark.
See, this goes back to the
whole
age thing.
What I'm saying is I don't know that Oklahoma...
Wait a minute. You're saying David Lee is a Sean Marion level player?
I think he's better. I got to be honest. I think when I'm looking at a 26-year-old David Lee going into his 5th season, hitting his prime.
So you think that David Lee is going to become considerably better than what he is right now?
I think he can be 20% better. I think he could be
20% is a lot. That's a lot.
I think he could be the starting power forward on a championship team.
Oh, no, you do not.
Why can't I think that?
No, you do not. Not only if only if it's the freaking Detroit Pistons, and you got 4 All-Stars at the other 4 positions.
That's ridiculous. Look at the Lakers last year. Derek Fisher freaking started for a championship team. He could barely walk. He made 2 shots all season. I mean, David Lee could absolutely be a piece of a championship team.
Apples and oranges.
Steiny, might you back in this?
Power forward on a championship team?
Buke, I need to buy you an NBA stat register that came out after 2003.
We're falling back on the stats. He played off bad. Look.
Dude, I'm not giving you PER. I'm giving you rebounding stats. This guy grabs rebounds. He grabs 12 rebounds a game.
What did Nick shoot? You know how many rebounds were available for him?
What does that mean? So you use the same thing for Dwight Howard.
Missed shots, and you're a hustle guy. You're going to get your hands on a lot of balls, and nobody cares because you're going to rebound it and give it back to the same who missed the first time. Well, eventually we're going to get that rebound. So rebound away, David. You're not going to beat us.
All right, now
have at it.
I'm now convinced that you have not watched the Knicks play in 4 years.
Come on.
I don't think you've seen him play once. You've just told me I have never seen the Knicks play.
This is what I hate, because the way this is going to be played on the blogosphere is that I am killing David Lee. That's the last thing I want to do. David Lee is – I love guys like David Lee. But when you start telling me that David Lee could be a power forward on a championship team,
he could.
Have no ground. You have absolutely no basis for saying that.
I don't.
Who has he played for, and what have his teams done?
We just watched Alberto was the starting center on a championship team 2 years ago.
Stop it.
Why stop it?
Because he played next to Tim Duncan, one of the all-time greatest players. Sure, if you put him next to one of the all-time greats,
you don't think
then, yeah, you better have pretty good guys at all the other positions.
You're crazy. I'm not saying he's one of the 3 best players on a championship team, but I think he could be one of the starters.
Let me ask you this. Why is there absolutely no market for David Lee?
I don't know.
If all that you say he is, why wouldn't somebody be saying, hey, you know what? That guy, man, he's Paul Millsap.
I'll give you, who got $36 million from Portland, a $36 million offer. I think David Lee's
crazy.
Better.
Which was inexplicable.
Crazy, but Utah matched it. So how crazy could it have been? 2 teams thought he was worth $36 million. You have your little biases against players is the problem.
No,
you really do. You have biases against players.
The bias I have is when somebody looks at statistics and says and projects it as being some other player and doesn't look at the circumstances under which that guy got them and the difference between getting stats on a meaningful team. See, here's the thing. I need to see David Lee get those numbers on a team that matters, that every night teams, whoever they play, is gearing up for them and looks at them and says, look, we can't give them anything tonight. We need to be on our game tonight. And he's going to have a front line. Because here's the thing. If David Lee's playing next to Tim Duncan, he doesn't have all the opportunities for rebounds. Who else was rebounding for the Knicks?
Okay, then I could use the same argument for your friend Sean Marion. Couldn't you say that D'Antoni and that offense totally inflated his stats and maybe he's not good at all?
Yeah, you know what? Not good at all.
I'm saying good. Maybe he's not an elite guy.
I would say that the opportunity to get numbers with the Phoenix Suns inflated the numbers that Sean Marion got. Sure.
Okay, and then he stunk last season, and now just signed for $8 million a year. Why didn't he put up those numbers that David Lee did?
3s and 4s. Come on.
Can David Lee guard 3s?
He can guard 3s and 4s like Marion can.
No, but he's a power forward. What do you want from me?
Right. Well, that's the
matchups are the whole thing.
All right, Oklahoma's.
Can David Lee shoot outside of 15 feet?
I almost said the team, but the team that I won't name, they signed Ned Kristic to 3 years, $15 million.
Yep.
You're telling me David Lee isn't worth 3 years, $26 million?
No, I'm on your side on the David Lee. You know, if he got a 5-year, $40 million offer, I certainly buy that.
You think he's worse than Charlie Villanueva? Really? Charlie Villanueva got 5 years, $40 million.
No, let's not bring in comparatively.
Why?
And say
why not?
Because now we've brought in like 3 or 4 different guys who I'm not sure how I feel about how they're getting paid. I'm just looking at David Lee and you saying that he is a championship caliber power forward.
Yes, I absolutely think that.
You're saying Marion can't start for a championship team, but David Lee is a championship power forward.
Hold on. I didn't say Marion couldn't start on a championship team. I just don't think Dallas is going to be a championship team. I think he could be the fifth banana.
I don't think Marion is necessarily a starter on a title team.
I think he could be, under the David Lee analogy, I think he could be the 5th best guy on a really, really, really good team, which Dallas is not. I think ideally he's a 6th or 7th guy at this point in his career.
If Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw aren't suspended, the Phoenix Suns win a championship, and this whole conversation is moot.
But that was 2.5 years ago.
But that was the best team that year, and Sean Marion was a power forward on that team.
See, that's a whole other argument. The Spurs were great that year. You can't say that the Spurs weren't the best team that year. They led 5 of those 6 games.
The Phoenix Suns were the best team that year.
The Spurs led 5 of the 6 games that series by more than 10 points in the fourth quarter. How are they not the best team?
That's the way the Phoenix Suns played, and the Phoenix Suns reeled them in every single game.
They got their ass kicked, and they lost in 6.
Every single game.
I would make the case 2005 if Joe Johnson doesn't get hurt. I think that year the Suns were the best team.
Steve Nash doesn't have the gash on his nose. I mean, if the Fates obviously didn't want the Phoenix Suns to win, but you talk about all the things that took away from them in that series that had nothing to do with their actual ability. All things even, the Phoenix Suns were the better team.
Steiny Mo, the Steve Nash.
You know I hate agreeing with you. And as much as I would have loved Nash pouring champagne on me in the locker room after a championship, I would have liked the 05 team better. I had a weird feeling that the Spurs, even if those suspensions didn't happen, that they still would have won that series. They still had that championship know-how. And you saw the next year when the Suns lost them in the first round, and the Suns talked openly that team had a mental hold on Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I do think that was a factor. I think the 05 team had a better shot.
Well, and Joe Johnson got knocked out of that whole playoffs. And that Spurs team, I thought, was the weakest of all the Spurs teams, the 05 team. You guys don't agree with that?
I've already stated my case.
I can't wait for this David Lee thing to play out. First of all, I mean, you've played basketball. Some guys either know how to rebound or they don't. David Lee knows how to rebound. I don't think it matters what system it is. He's going to get his 10 rebounds.
Absolutely. And a guy who rebounds, I love to have him on my team. Would love to have David Lee on my team. But when you're now talking about a guy who's making $6, $7, $8 million, he's got to do more than that. He's got to be a
Why?
I've got to defend at the offensive end.
But the NBA economics doesn't say that that's the case. Rasheed Wallace got $20 million.
But particularly with the game the way it's played today, you have to have 5 guys who can score. That's the thing that you. That's why a Charlie Villanueva does get the money that he gets.
Yeah.
Because he is an offensive threat, and you hope that you're going to get 7, 6.5 rebounds a game from him.
Yeah.
If he gives you that combination, that's better than David Lee giving you 12 rebounds a game, but not being a guy that you have to guard at the other end on a team that matters.
I like Charlie, but him getting overpaid was the worst thing that ever could have happened to him. Steiny Mo, what were you going to say?
Just my takeaway here is, I think the important message out of all this is, do not try to force your arguments by throwing the Mavs into this premature. You have to just let it happen organically.
So you're telling me that the Mavs aren't done?
Fireworks will erupt on their own.
So the Mavs aren't done.
I don't understand that at all. Oh, I got you. Yeah. Well, but you guys were so heated email-wise. I mean,
yeah, but you
that's
gotta
the thing that I don't get about
Simmons.
Simmons, when he's at the other end of an email, can be downright vicious.
That's not true.
When you get him on a podcast and he's got, Subway dollars to push, he's got sandwiches to sell.
Well, the other thing is
suddenly he becomes Mr. Now he's soft-pedaling everything.
Hold on.
Killing us for years about you're too close to Kobe, I'm too close to Nowitzki and Nash. He spends 5 minutes in the company of an NBA player, and now he's at Barron's house at the trading desk.
Oh, you know what? That is the truest. That's the truest thing that's ever been said.
I'm a nice guy. What do you want from me?
Truth.
Kevin Love. I'm surprised you didn't tell me that Kevin Love is the best rebounder in the NBA.
I think he's in the top 5.
Podcast last week.
Hold on. I really resent the fact that you think I went soft after I called Drew Gooden a stiff. What's stronger than that? I think that was a terrible signing.
Podcast next week. That would be the best 1-year contract in the NBA.
I don't think Drew would be able. Okay.
3 minutes with Drew Gooden, and you'd be telling us about what a great guy is and how you love his facial hair. Without question, I know this for a fact because Drew Gooden's he's a really nice guy. I mean, if you meet him and hang with him a little bit, he's a really nice guy.
Couldn't you say that about 70% of the guys though?
Maybe 70%, yeah.
All right, that wraps up part 1. Make sure you check out part 2 of my podcast with Ric Bucher and Marc Stein on the Subway Fresh Take hotline. See you there.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
This concludes another installment of the BS Report. And with all the talk about sports, Bill Simmons neglected to mention this important just breaking news, which frankly cannot go unstated. This summer, Subway is teaming up with Live Nation to bring you great food and great music for a great value. Right now, buy a Subway $5 footlong and get a Live Nation concert ticket for just $5 to some of the hottest Live Nation shows like Nickelback, The Fray, and Crew Fest 2. Ticket price does not include fees. See the nearest Subway for details.